I like you, you like me. If I like you, you like me. If I like you, yeah. If I like you, if I like you, you like me. If I like you, you like me. Why don't we?
Hello and welcome to what I think will end up being the first episode of Not Another Couples podcast. We've recorded a couple, but this one we're going to be talking about some Halloween-y things. So I think we're going to release it on Halloween first. But yeah, which is kind of weird. And I've said like 8 times already.
Yes.
I think we did introductions in an earlier episode, so you're just gonna have to wait for those till next time, but we'll keep things very simple. I am Casey. I stream on Twitch and go by the Adjunct GM on Twitch and YouTube and a bunch of other things. A bit of a writer, sort of an English teacher. I kind of do a handful of other things, and I'm joined now by my wife Megan.
Hello.
And we're just doing a simple little podcast to talk about things that we've tried for the first time together. And just having a good time, making a thing and finding an excuse to chat. So if that sounds interesting, you found the right place.
To elaborate a little bit more, a lot of it the idea of this podcast came from the fact that I grew up as a kid that was very busy with her hobbies. My whole family was very busy, like constantly out of the house family. So there were a lot of things that I didn't like experience or movies I didn't see growing up. And, you know, we started talking about how like, oh, you've never seen this movie or you never got to do this as a kid. And we decided that we were going to try to start fixing that this year. So it's been an experience to experience things for the first time.
To be fair, I think we've been doing that throughout the whole 10 plus years we've been together.
It's actually been 8, sir.
8 married, but we dated for 2 years prior. Thank you very much. Can you believe her, folks? I have to remind her all these things. We're breaking gender roles. That's what we're doing in this episode.
But yeah, we're going to make this into a Halloween episode of sorts, starting, first of all, with kind of a shocker on this one, and especially when I mentioned this to most everyone that I have mentioned this to. I've never carved a pumpkin in my life until about a couple days ago.
Oh my gourd. She's just shaking her head. No, people can't see that, Megan. They don't know what you're doing. It's a podcast. This is an audio medium. They can't see the pumpkin either, unfortunately. But I have took some photos. We'll post them on my Twid.
Yeah, we'll see if we can find somewhere to post. Maybe we'll make it the thumbnail of this episode while we're still getting our actual thumbnail worked out. But I wondered why all this time, like, I had never carved a pumpkin before. And it's always, you know, a little embarrassing to admit that up until this point that I had never carved a jack-o'-lantern before. It was just never a thing with my family. And it seems to be most everyone I've talked to, the traditional, like the Halloween tradition to do besides pumpkin patches and trick-or-treating, that type thing. That seems to be the Halloween tradition, is you gotta carve pumpkins. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't know the reason why we never did until I asked my own mother a few days ago, which, again, to preface, I've said this in one of our earlier episodes, my parents weren't like purposely trying to shelter me, or they weren't highly conservative, like, no, she's too young, she can't watch. They weren't trying to hide stuff from me. It's just, we never had some of these things set as a priority in our lives, or just didn't do things because we were constantly busy.
Your family is full of very hyper-focused people.
Very, very. My brother was a sports guy, and if it was winter, it was basketball. If it was spring, summer, it was baseball. And if it was fall, it was football. So, and then my dad is a blue collar factory worker. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, but also took care of my grandmother. And then I was a dancer all the way up and from 3 to 24. But I asked her why we had never carved pumpkins, at least with me.
Well, it's because it's sinful, right?
No. No, please don't give people that idea. I asked her, and this is, if you would have known my mother, this is a very typical my mom answer. I asked her why we never carved pumpkins when I was a kid, just over the phone the other day. And she said, well, we did when your brother was younger. I think the last time we did it when you were a baby and too young to carve it. My brother's 4.5 years older than me. And she said after that, I think we just stopped doing it because it was just so messy.
That does sound like your mother.
That very much sounds like my mother. She can't stand a mess. She hates anything that has to be cleaned or cleaned up after, which, she raised 2 kids, which is kind of surprising, but she just never did it again. And I never really knew what I was missing on all those years I grew up as a kid. Whereas you, Casey, was that kind of a traditional experience for you growing up?
Not like specifically or intentionally, but it would be a thing that happened, that we would carve pumpkins, probably get the cousins together, and that would be a thing that, but not like a specific, we carve pumpkins every Halloween or something like that. If we have stuff like that with family, it's usually Christmas or Easter related. Mm-hmm. Not that my family has any problem with Halloween. In fact, my father is quite the fan of Halloween, very insisting on having everybody over, and we'll put a movie on the projector and have a big bonfire going and maybe do a hayride with me and the bigger kids out in the woods with masks and chainsawless chainsaws.
To scare the little
or something
ones.
like that. And my dad was a part of a nonprofit, like sort of biker club. It was a biker club. They specifically raise money for a local organization called Camp Rainbow, which is a camp for children with special needs.
Shout out to Camp Rainbow.
And they also used to work with a organization called Dream Factory. But my dad is he's not active there anymore. He's very much a believer that if you're not actively riding a bike, you shouldn't be in a motorcycle club. And different people have different opinions on that.
But he has like medical reasons as to why he can't. So as much as he wishes he could. But, staying on topic here a little bit.
What I wanted to get into is the big thing for us for Halloween was the Bikers Who Care Motorcycle Club. One of their largest fundraisers other than the Christmas toy run is the Bikers Who Scare Haunted House. Mm-hmm. So I always took part in that. When we were dating, I took you 1 year. They hosted it sort of all around town in the early years, and then found a home in a movie theater that had closed down for many years. That's not an option anymore. The rental price on the movie theater ended up getting a little high. But it was always such a great time helping with the haunted house. And my dad has a friend. He wasn't there the year you helped us, Megan. This individual had lost his legs at the knees a handful of years prior. And I can't remember his name right now. Great guy. But he was always one of the people that designed a room, and his room inevitably had him getting his quote unquote legs chopped off. Like he'd put on his prosthetics.
Oh my God.
And have someone like run a chainsaw in the gap, and he'd have them break away, and then he'd crawl at people.
Oh my God.
I'm trying to remember. I'm going to ask Dad his name, and I'll mention it next time. But the Bikers Who Scare, great folks who do great charity work. I remember when my first band got started playing, we were terrible. Our first show was at a juvenile diabetes charity event.
It's actually, I think, now turned into the haunted car wash.
I saw they're doing a haunted car wash this year.
They've done that for the past couple of years, actually.
Yeah. But I love the haunted house stuff. But my dad invented his room. He found a deal on some like star pattern carpet. So like a bunch of carpet that looked like planets and stars and stuff. And he did the room, floor, ceilings, and walls in that carpet, and then made costumes out of it too. So we would be in there frozen against the walls.
So you'd like jump out at people.
Yes.
Oh gosh. And you blend. Oh no. Yeah, that was the one. Speaking of experiencing new things, that was the one and only time I ever did a haunted house. I will never, ever do it again. I'm such a chicken. But back on the pumpkin carving, another reason we kind of decided to just do this besides for the podcast and, remedy the fact that I've never done it before as a 33-year-old woman, is it was actually our son's first time carving a pumpkin too. And he sort of participated. He's a little over a year and a half, and, he doesn't get to really like carve into it or anything. We let him try to scoop, the guts of the pumpkin out, but I think he thought it was too cold and slimy to mess with it.
That's why it was so funny. You were like, your mom says it's messy, because Kiddo also thought it was too messy. He stuck his hand down to the pumpkin and pulled out one handful of guts and like shakes it off and just says, ew.
I tried to get him to use the spoon, which he usually will, like, he's at that point now, as a toddler, where he likes to scoop with the spoon. Like, he's working on his scooping skills, at least when he's eating. He does it with oatmeal and cereal and all that stuff. So I was trying to get him to do it with like that. I think it's called the Gooper Scooper is what it called. It's in the typical like pumpkin carving kits. It's that big green spoon that you can use to carve out the guts. But he wanted nothing to do with it. And I mean, we were ready for him to make a mess. We still gave him a bath right after, but we were ready for him to make a mess, and he just wanted nothing to do with it. But he was fascinated, at least, to watch us carve into it. And I actually had a lot of fun carving it. It made me wanted to do another one, if I'm honest. But I didn't realize two things. I kind of realized. One is I thought it would be a whole lot harder to carve into an actual pumpkin, but it kind of almost cut through a little bit like cardboard. Cardboard actually would be harder to cut than a pumpkin would be. But I also thought that you could recycle the guts of the pumpkin. I thought I heard, or at least misunderstood a long time ago, that people use the innards of a pumpkin after carving a jack-o'-lantern to make pumpkin pie or muffins or something like that.
So you can use some of that. Typically, the part you take out is the seeds is what you want for that kind of thing. You can put them in the oven with some salt and some seasoning and make a healthy snack of pumpkin seeds. But the part you want to like cook with is not the like stringy gut stuff. Yeah. It's the part that's like just past the hard orange rind. So think like sort of like a melon. There's that layer of flesh in between. That's the part you like bake and cook with.
Oh, okay. So parts of it are still recyclable besides the seeds. Okay. And at least for us, we do intend to give the pumpkin back to nature as of sorts. We do have like a small deer population around here that likes to hang around. The squirrels. We're not like inner city, but we're not like out in the country. We do have animals that hang around. Not yet. That's the eventual plan, is to move out to the country. But, our pumpkin, sadly, is already starting to rot. I think it's almost a week old at this point. But
starting to look like that old chocolate lady from SpongeBob. But no, what you do with pumpkins, Megan, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it in one of our flower beds. And then we have pumpkins next year.
No, that is a terrible idea, because your father did that same thing, and that pumpkin plant went wild.
Well, we have raised beds, so it'll be good.
But no, I'm sorry.
If we move when we want to, it'll be someone else's problem.
I'd rather feed the deer, but that's my thing. I mentioned the rotting thing because I know there's ways to preserve a pumpkin and help it last longer. Like you can spray it with clear coat or hairspray or something like that. But then it's not safe for animals to eat. And then you're just left with this petrified pumpkin.
So I've seen stuff about that and I don't buy it. One, because there was a TikTok I meant to send you earlier today. There are people that try very hard to preserve pumpkins indefinitely, like their jack-o'-lanterns, just to see if they can.
Oh, the resin thing. Yeah. That was weird.
And pumpkins have an affinity for rot. They just don't preserve
That's what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's what they're supposed to do.
Death is in their nature. It also ties them more to Halloween, I think.
Actually, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for when we can carve another pumpkin, whether that's, anytime soon or next year. To be fair, I should have clarified this at the beginning. We never carved pumpkins, but I liked to paint like little mini pumpkins, the kind that you're supposed to like take and bake and put into recipes or things like that. But I like to paint those, and those lasted quite a while for me.
Nice.
But I was always the kind that I had like, I asked my mom if I could do that, not if we could do it as a family. She's like, you can get some if you want to, but I was the only one who actually wanted to try to like get into the spirit of things. You know, my mom's as we said, not about messes, not about fuss. She doesn't like to make a fuss about anything because it's just a headache for her. But that's kind of a long story with her past and all of that and the family she grew up with. But either way, I think that's all my notes, at least for pumpkin carving. I finally did it, and I can't wait to do it again, especially when our kid's a little bit older.
Speaking of our kid, his costume this year is a combination. We have two. And what we're going to do is he's going to wear one trick-or-treating and has the other for going to see Sesame Street Live.
Oh, yes.
As that is one of his favorite things. So he has an Elmo costume and a Cookie Monster costume. We took him to a community trick-or-treating event the other day. And he had his Elmo costume for that. And Megan and I dressed respectively as Cookie Monster and Oscar the Grouch.
I was Cookie. He was Oscar. Cookie's my favorite. But
yeah, so our kid got to be double Sesame Street characters, and we did Sesame Street along with him, which was fun. Our initial idea for a costume was Scooby-Doo.
But there were so many families that did Scooby-Doo. So I'm glad we went with Sesame Street. Plus, we didn't have to pay for the costumes. Casey's mom and aunt were actually so excited because they loved a thrift shop. They actually found the costumes for us. So it's even better. We didn't have to pay for the costumes. So
I cannot wait to dress him up as a hobbit a little later, though. I have to show him the movies once he's old enough to watch them and instill that love of Lord of the Rings.
Once he's old enough to want to start watching them and not want to watch Cars for the 50 billionth time.
Oh, Lord.
But anyway, that's a story for another day. If we're going to keep on with the Halloween theme here, there's actually one other thing we're going to talk about here, and we're going to try to keep it short and kind of zip through it a little bit so that this is not a 2-hour long episode. I also watched my first, quote, scary movie, and it was a classic, and I'm kind of surprised we went with this choice, but I watched Alien for the first time.
Such a good movie. Real quick, Meg, as you said, you've never watched like a horror movie before, which that actually blows my mind way more than pumpkins. What is your favorite Halloween movie?
Oh, Hocus Pocus, without a doubt.
Hocus Pocus. Mine would probably be Halloween Town.
Yeah, I mean that's one that I grew up with. But Hocus Pocus, just something about it's so kitschy and so funny every single time I watch it. It's sort of a comfort movie and like a must watch every single year for me.
How do you feel about the sequel?
It's okay. It doesn't hold a candle to the first, but I think it's a pretty good storyline. I think it's pretty solid.
I think they tried to water down the witches and make them less scary. It's not, well, they kind of waffle. Like it starts that way, but then also try to make you like add sympathy for them at the beginning and end in a way that I really didn't need.
I think more of it, what it was, is that the only original characters they brought back was the witches and then Billy. That's it. They didn't bring the other characters back, which that was sort of what captured the magic of the first movie. But they didn't have Danny back. They didn't have the cat, except with a couple of brief appearances of an actual black cat, not Binks. But, you know, that's part of it, is that it's playing into the whole nostalgia factor. But I mean, I still
noise. I'm plugging in our laptop.
But I still liked it. That's just me personally. I mean, I know there's going to be other fans of the original Hocus Pocus out there that will highly disagree and say the second movie is awful. But I mean, you're going to run into any person who loves the original of any movie so much that anything after does not hold a candle to it. But back on Scary Movie Alien here. I'm glad we picked a classic, because this is another sort of thing. Like, there's a lot of classic movies that I haven't seen, and I'm glad we went with this choice. Would I ever watch it again? I will tell you guys that after we go through all our notes.
Yeah.
While we were watching it, I made Casey promise that we would watch it during the day and we would not do it while it was pitch black dark, because I cannot handle. I am a grade A chicken. I cannot handle scary movies. I can't handle jump scares. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm a very sensitive person personally. We do actually have a TikTok of one of the parts of Alien.
I haven't posted it yet. I might do that tonight.
Well, we might want to wait until this episode comes out.
Nah, I'm going to post it now as a teaser.
You'll have to edit it a little bit shorter because it's 2 minutes long. But yeah, I think I screamed about 4 times, definitively 4 times, maybe more, but I'm not sure. I have this habit where I like hide my half my face into like my hoodie or under the blanket or something. Like, I have to hide from the scary thing. But we took notes during the movie, kind of like the same approach we took with the Studio Ghibli movies. But
let me give a little background to the movie first, for those who aren't familiar. First of all, this is a movie directed by Hollywood legend Ridley Scott, known to be a bit of a auteur director. Maybe not always the easiest person to work with. Produced by 20th Century Fox, along with Brandywine Productions. Starring a whole list of incredible people, including the one and only Sigourney Weaver. John Hurt is in the movie, as well as Dr. Kane. I almost didn't recognize him in being so young in this, by the way. Did you realize that was John Hurt?
No, I didn't actually.
Yeah. The wand chose the wizard and all that. And Ian Holm as Dr. Ash. I mean, wonderful actors who you might not always recognize. Do you know who Ian Holm is? And
not totally familiar, no.
He's Bilbo.
Oh, of course. Okay. That's exactly where you know him from.
Legendary actor. Another one sadly passed away several years ago, I believe. But amazing performance in this movie, as well as Bilbo. So, I mean, just star-studded cast. Movie was filmed in 1979. Massive commercial success. There's no wonder that we're still seeing Alien movies, given that this movie had a budget of $11 million.
Wow.
Which sounds like a lot of money. I believe that's a pretty middle-of-the-road budget for the 70s, for the late 70s. I was
going to say, for movies, these days, 11 million's kind of
change.
Low, yeah.
But box office, not Lifetime, box office, this movie made $187 million. Wow. So huge return. Released Megan. This movie released on May 25th. Almost our anniversary. That's hilarious.
Not in the 70s. Our anniversary was not in the 70s.
No. Let's see what else. The art in the movie was designed by visual artist H.R. Geiger. Did the designs for the movie. A brilliant visual artist from Switzerland, whose paintings are all like biomechanic. We had an artist friend that we lived with back in college when we had a ton of roommates living in our weird little commune. And one of them, a painter, a friend of ours, was a big fan of H.R. Geiger and did a whole series of paintings that I think he may be in the Navy now. I think that's where he is, Megan.
Who knows? He was like supposed to be like the director of an art museum at one point or something. And then,
but he asked me to hold on to a bunch of his paintings. They're actually sitting in the room that we're in right now. And a lot of them are H.R. Geiger inspired. He did this whole series of paintings of like an old man finding a spaceship in the desert. Like the paintings were meant to tell his story. Mm-hmm. And they are all sitting about 10 feet from me, about half finished. Maybe one day I should try to finish them. I'm nowhere near as talented as him, but maybe I'll try to finish those paintings. We had a lot of art friends in college like that. I have paintings from so many of our friends.
We have a lot of art friends, and a lot of our friends is art.
Yeah.
We're collectors of sorts.
A little bit of collectors. This movie did incredibly well in the box office, did incredibly well culturally. It has a legacy of excellence that has continued on through a ton of new movies, including the most recent, I believe, would be Alien Romulus. So, I mean, they're still going. And I think, Megan, a sequel or prequel has been announced to Alien Romulus that will connect it to the franchise overall, that will show the ultimate fate of the alien, of the xenomorph from the first film.
Well, I'm not lying awake at night wondering what happened to that xenomorph, but
so
that's just me.
Yeah. So the basic plot line of the movie is we have this commercial spaceship, this sort of space big rig. Basically, they're truckers.
A freighter.
Working for, I guess, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, which is sort of this ubiquitous megacorp that spans all of the Alien movies and is like mega rich. We're sort of in like a post-capitalist. I think we can call it a dystopia, maybe, especially when you know that it takes place in the same universe as Blade Runner.
For those who are not familiar with Alien, but are familiar with Disney, like I am, you can equate this to By and Large from the WALL-E movie a little bit.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing up Disney, because remind me to later explain that the xenomorph might be a Disney princess.
Not this argument again.
Yeah, Disney owns the franchise, and there is a xenomorph queen. So any of its spawn are
I'm not listening to
princesses.
This argument. I am not. Moving on.
But anyway, so we have this space trucker crew of the Nostromo that are hauling like an oil rig, I think is what it's meant to be,
It's
or an
like
ore
mineral,
processing facility.
It's mineral ore that they're hauling.
And are called to investigate a distress beacon of sorts. After the crew wakes up from cryo sleep, which a big part of this movie is that spacefarers spend a lot of time in cryo. Mm-hmm. Turns out that the distress beacon was to an alien vessel, a non-human spaceship where they encounter eggs.
Which I was surprised to learn at this point, if I could add an additional note to this, that they are supposed to, by law, investigate distress signals, and they travel to planets that are several galaxies away, but humans had yet to make contact with alien life up to that point. Was kind of mind-blowing to me.
So there's a lot of, like, one of my particular, like, nerd Roman Empire things for me is sci-fi media. And there's a recent series that, if you haven't seen it, listeners, you should watch, called The Three-Body Problem, that is a series of books by a Chinese author whose name I'm forgetting right now. But this plays a lot with the idea of what's called the Fermi paradox. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
So the Fermi paradox, I'm about to get a little specific. Sorry, folks. So the Fermi paradox, Fermi was a scientist, an astrophysicist who posited there's so many planets in the universe. The universe is infinitely large, and there's billions of planets that could sustain life. And it doesn't make sense then that we have not encountered, now that life other than human life, given that we have the capability to observe planets in millions of light years away. So Fermi then says that's a paradox. If there is other life, we should have been able to see it. And one answer to that you see a lot in sci-fi horror in particular, because it's the scary one, is called The Dark Forest, which says that the reason we have not encountered other life is because it's hiding itself, because the universe is dangerous, and when you make your position known, it will eat you alive.
Oh, well, yeah, no, I think you actually explained this to me a long time ago, actually. This was like a car conversation we had when we were on a road trip.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me about this a little bit, actually.
So the 3-body problem, again, Netflix just adapted the first book and a half into a series, and it's very good. Posits it essentially creates a cold war between Earth and a species of alien who finds the coordinates for Earth, and it's going to take them like 10 years to reach Earth. And it's like this cold war where they've sent computers ahead of them to wage war on their behalf to try to prepare Earth for their arrival. And the way the Cold War comes to a stalemate is a scientist discovers this concept of the dark forest and says, like, if you conquer us, I will I will blast your coordinates out across the cosmos, and whatever takes everything out will take us both out. But I think Alien is playing a lot with that thing. The alien is the predator in the dark forest. The xenomorph is.
Okay. So they find the alien vessel and they come across the eggs.
Mm-hmm. And one of our scientists, or one of the scientist members of the crew, who I believe which one was it?
Oh gosh.
Was it Kane?
No, I don't. Well, maybe it was Kane.
Kane is John Hurt's character.
Regardless.
Which would probably be why I didn't recognize him, because I don't think he lasted very long.
No, and I think he had most of his face covered up.
Yeah, it was Kane. So that was John Hurt's character. That's why we didn't recognize him. He spent the whole time with a thing on his face. Yeah.
But anyway, they find the guy with the thing on his face. They stupidly take him back into the ship. Alien dies. Guy wakes up. But then it turns out the alien baby burst from his chest, killed the guy, and it starts running amok, and it grows very quickly, and it's last man standing.
Mm-hmm. I want to start going through some of our notes, but first we get to the scene where the alien, the xenomorph, bursts out of Kane's chest. And something I wanted to share with you about this movie that I'm curious if people know. From my understanding, and perhaps I'm dramaticizing this, but I have heard that the cast was not told exactly what was going to happen. Like, they were filming a scene of them having one last meal before going back under into cryo sleep. And they knew there would be a turn at some point. But my understanding is that the actor for Kane, John Hurt, and the technical crew were the only ones that knew that was coming.
I would hope Hurt knew that he was going to have that prop stuck out of his chest.
So their like terror in those opening moments is supposedly very real.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's a little bit why I think you told me Ridley Scott is seen as sort of a problematic director.
Oh, Kane's not a science officer. He's the vice captain.
Yeah.
He's the Zorro.
Yeah. But if we could get into our notes, because I don't want to go too long on this episode. Yeah. Okay, so the first note, going from the start of the movie to the end at least, number one, shaking off the cryo sleep. I just had to add this note in because it's one of those types of sleeps where like you sleep for so long and you wake up still tired, so you like have to take a whole hour after waking up to even function for the rest of the day. I can't imagine sleeping for 10 years.
Their meal is like cereal and coffee.
I was going to say it was cereal on the table, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was
Which
weird.
Actually I think makes sense for space travel where your rations have to stay untouched for years at a time because you're asleep.
But cereal still gets stale eventually.
Not if it stays vacuum packed.
Don't you remember my Mimi's pantry?
Fair.
That's another story entirely, but yeah.
I feel like we have to real quick. Megan's grandmother, her Mimi, wonderful woman, was a big bargain shopper of groceries.
Yeah, like really, whenever she saw something that was on sale, she bought it, whether she had in her mind like, oh, maybe Peggy, my mom, could use this, or maybe Megan or Matt could have this. And
she had a backup pantry in her walk-in closet. She did.
Like, she would buy, if it was a buy 4, get 1 free on Betty Crocker cake mix, she'd do it. And then she would offer it to us, but then my mom's like, oh, maybe I'll just take 1 yellow cake mix. But the other 4 would probably be forgotten about and sit in there for years. Mm-hmm. And when she passed away, we found so much expired food back there. And it was supposed to be dried goods, but it was like, what year? It was 2023 last year when she passed away. God rest her soul. She died at 94. But we found food in there that was all the way back to 2014. Mm-hmm. Number 2, true science fiction. What I mean by that, I had to pause the movie to look at you and ask this. I'm like, at this point, because we had to look up the year, what year did you say this movie came out?
1979.
1979. So if space exploration, we landed on the moon in 1969.
And then we made a landing that was lunar.
Yep. What a reach with that one. But space exploration was still very new at that point and very much not actually explored, except for a small handful of times from different countries around the world. And I know a lot of literature at this point was also starting to come out, or has been out for only a short amount of time. So that's different to this day and age when we have things like the Hubble telescope, and we've had several lunar missions to Mars, and we have now discovered so much of space. It's insane. Mm-hmm. But in 1976, it was literally left to our imagination almost. Mm-hmm. This is true science fiction.
This movie predates the ISS, the International Space Station, by 19 years.
Wow. That's pretty neat.
I'm actually I didn't realize the ISS wasn't built until 1998. It's been around less time than I thought it has.
Wow. I wonder, wow. But just to take a little amount of appreciation there, like true science, or science fiction is not like my preferred genre for, things to watch or things to read. But, I can get into it every now and then, but I can definitely appreciate how amazing this truly was when it first came out in theaters.
And how much they got right.
Yeah, that's crazy.
There's plenty that they posit the existence of artificial gravity on a ship that is not spherical, which that doesn't make any sense at all. But so they really should have been floating around that ship, but they got right the idea of compartmentalization of a ship. There aren't any windows, which is also very accurate. That's actually something I saw a documentary one time about how Star Wars has so many windows on their ships and how that really shouldn't be possible.
They do have a couple of windows, but I think they're mostly in the cockpit.
Mm-hmm. And there can be glass, but very small.
Yeah.
The idea being, there's actually a study that I read maybe 7 or 8 years ago of a lab that was working on creating double pane glass with a layer of plasma between it. And somehow that would allow you to have large viewing windows. It's one of the things they were inspired by the Emperor's view window out into space in the Imperial throne room in Star Wars. Which, by the way, this movie predates or does not predate Star Wars. That was 2 years prior to
Star Wars. That's another thing that came up. When we paused for a second, I'm like, what came out first, Star Wars or Alien?
Star Wars by 2 years.
By 2 years. So it's not that Alien was inspired by Star Wars per se.
2 years exactly. Star Wars came out May 25th, 1977.
It should have come out on May 4th. But that's
I wonder if that was on purpose. If they really I wonder if Ridley Scott was we're going to release on the same day as Star Wars.
Possibly.
And Star Wars has made a thing. I'm looking now. They released Return of the Jedi on May 25th as well. And every movie of the prequel trilogy was released in May.
Well, that's tradition at this point.
Yeah, the new trilogy is all released in December because Christmas releases are the way to go now.
But we're not talking about Star Wars here, are we?
No, sorry.
It's fine. But no, just had to appreciate how this was like actual science fiction by definition at the time. It's pretty cool to think about. Note number 3, fuck around, find out. I quickly discovered watching this that I was one of those people when watching a scary movie that talks back to it. Like, girl, you better not. Don't you go in there. Or like, listen, like, come on now. Let's play it smart. But if people actually played it smart, we wouldn't have a scary movie. Yeah, this was, I think, a note that was more like directed to Kane, who was messing around with the egg and then just stared at it. It was as it was breathing. Like, you're not going to think to back up away from this thing. You're going to look at it like head on, like get eyeball level with it. Okay, fine. Fuck around, find out. Note number 4, Ripley's the smart one. Listen to the lady. It blows my mind about, I'm sorry. I love you, hun. But even back then, how it's portrayed women as the smart, sensible ones.
I will say in this movie, it's uniquely positioned for the time it was made. I think this is a trait of a lot of sci-fi that you see the same in Star Wars with Leia. Remarkably, women who are portrayed as remarkably competent in comparison to the men around them. In this movie and in a lot of sci-fi around that time, but 100%.
No, it's just, that's what I kept saying over, like, listen to the lady. She told you not to open the door. There's rules for quarantine. She's trying to stick to the safety of the ship. Safety for all instead of the safety for one. But, you know, later on in the movie, it's understood why they disregarded orders. But either way, note number 5, the dog is concerned. Not the dog in the movie, our dog. So after like the really big scare that really made me scream, it's just funny. I had to put in the note there that our dog was highly concerned, and not just we actually have 2 dogs, but not the young one who has only been a part of our family for like, I think 6 months now, but she's very sweet. She's very sensitive, but surprisingly, it was our curmudgeon-y old man who's been with us for a long time. He's 11 years old. He don't hardly get up for anything. He came over to me, and I will also point, he's not a mama's boy. He's Casey's dog for sure. He loves me, but he loves Casey. And he came over just hearing me scream a few times. And he's genuinely like, are you okay? Please pet me. It'll make you feel better. It'll make me feel better. He kind of just laid his head on me, just like, it's okay. And it was kind of surprising that that's what it took to get him up from his long time laying on the floor. Then, number 6, the fucking damn android. That's another part that, like, I think really made me jump and scream. Like, we want to talk about. Yeah,
I don't think you saw him getting decapitated as something that was going to happen.
No, like I knew the video we have of the TikTok we're going to post is the part where the queen, or like the newly like giant big xenomorph, is creeping up behind the guy that's in the Hawaiian. I forget the maintenance guy's name, but he's always the one that says right and has the cigarette in his mouth, but goes after Jonesy. I saw that coming, but it was like the like slowly creeping in fear. And then when it finally jumps at the guy, that's what made me scream. No, the android, the part where he got his, thank you. The part where he got his head like almost clean chopped off. I screamed because I'm just like, what the hell just happened? And I've like, my hands were flying to my face. I looked at Casey like, did that just happen? What's going on?
And he bleeds milk.
Oh God, that was gross. It was like chunky milk too. Like, ugh.
That ain't 2%.
No. Oh my God.
But yeah. Then you say, forget the cat, but also, where's the cat?
I kept going back and forth over whether I was concerned for the cat or not, because I kept thinking, like, if it were me, I wouldn't even be concerned about getting the cat. Like, why are they so obsessed with saving this cat? They gotta just get out of there, man. Self-preservation. But also the animal lover in me was like, wait a minute, where's Jonesy? Where's Jonesy? Where's the crate?
I love that they put a cat on the ship, as it's such a human thing that these people would want a pet for being in space for years at a time.
It keeps the humanity aspect of the whole mission in it.
And it sort of factors into me also the aspect of, they took a lot of like maritime culture, like the idea of sailors. Like they talk about shares, like you would hear about on like a whaling vessel.
You had to explain that to me, yes.
And the like titles are the same as a nautical vessel. I love that aspect.
And then finally, our last note, the alien did not look like a guy in a costume till the end. I just have to applaud this movie at how well it used practical effects, and computer CGI was not even a thing at that time.
Yeah.
It really did not look like a guy in a suit until the very end, when the xenomorph was trying to get, like, Ripley was trying to fling the alien out of the ship, which I kind of understand that they could make like a big mechanical suit or something for the shots.
All rubber and latex.
But it looked like a shortened costume when it was at the part where the xenomorph was hanging on the door. That I could understand why they had to like frame it that way for that shot. But the rest of it, it looked like a true, genuine alien, which is crazy to me.
So I did a little research into this, since you mentioned that. The actor who played the xenomorph was Balaji Badejo. I'll make sure I say his name correct. I can't find a pronunciation guide for it, unfortunately. But this individual, this is the only movie he did. A Nigerian graphic artist who took a single acting job.
Oh, wow.
26 years old at the time, was a graphic design student from Lagos. Was discovered in a bar by a member of the casting team. Ridley Scott hired him for his height. He was 6'10".
Wow. Okay.
And very skinny. And part of this, the costume was designed so like you can't, like it doesn't make sense where eye holes would be.
Yeah.
So it just looks like it can't be a suit. But this was and this was his only movie he ever did before going back to being a graphic designer.
He should have kept going with that.
I mean, I understand that he was a very successful artist. Passed away in 1992.
Though I will say, though, if it's anything, take Jim Carrey's experience as the Grinch, for example, there's probably a reason why, at least as far as the suit is concerned, why he probably didn't want to keep doing more movies. It might have been pretty restricting at the time, especially if it was rubber and latex and having to wear it for several hours during the day. I imagine that's not comfortable.
Oh, probably not.
But, that's wow. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the correct way to pronounce his name. I don't like mispronouncing people's names on things.
Yeah, we try our best not to butcher names.
I can't find a pronunciation guide right now. My apologies.
Just know we're trying to be respectful. But either way, now, as far as did I like this movie? Yes and no. It's both. I can appreciate it for the classic that it is. There is some amount of enjoyment that I had with it. Would I ever watch it again? Hell no. I absolutely would not. But that's just because it's not my taste. It's not for me. These types of movies are just not my thing. I don't look to get scared for enjoyment purposes. I'm not one of those people that will go to haunted houses to get scared to have fun. I'm not one of those people who will watch a scary movie with popcorn and the lights off and have a fun time doing that. I'm spoopy, not spooky Halloween. So
fair enough. I think that's a good place to end on. So
I think so too.
You enjoyed it, but it wasn't quite your thing. Whereas I love scary movies. I like to be scared. They work on me, and I think I would like them more if they worked on me more. But I like a good scare. I don't like gory movies. I don't like
Neither
slasher
do I.
flicks.
No, that's what we really tried to avoid when we were trying to figure out what movie to watch for this episode. We very much tried to avoid any slasher flicks.
Yeah, my type of horror is like The Thing and The Shining and The Blob, things that are a little more psychological horror. Room 1408 is a good example of a movie that I find to be pretty scary, but I really enjoy.
As is tradition, we have to end it with a joke.
I already said, oh my gourd.
Well, I have sort of a cheesy but good one. If you're ready.
Yeah, go for it.
Sticking with the alien theme here, I could have gone Halloween, but I want to end on the alien note. How does an alien get a haircut?
How?
Eclipse it.
Game over, man. Catch y'all next time. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you another
soon.
time. Yeah.
We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
If I like you and you like me, if I like you and you like me, if I like you and you like me, and you like me, and you like me, if I like you and you like me, if I like you and you like me, if I like you, if I like you.